What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Corey Austin MMA Theorem. So, the premier fight at light heavyweight for the UFC has been made. Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankaleav. This will be on March the 8th. It is here in the States. It will be specifically in Las Vegas. Now, the first thing I want to say is I'm subscribed to MMA Joey. I watched his video about this and I thought, bro, he's making way too big of a deal about the fact that this is being scheduled during Ramadan. All right? To Ankaleav, this is not a big deal. Fighters, other athletes do it all the time. There are ways that they can work around it. MMA Joey, everybody doesn't have to eat 7 meals a day, bro, like you do. Okay, there are professional athletes that do like intermittent fasting where from sun up to sundown they won't have any meals. Then in the evenings, after a certain period of time, they can get in their calories. But listen, let's look at this. Let's look at this. Okay, when is Ramadan? Ramadan starts the evening of February 28th. As we know, there's only 28 days in February, right? So if you count the days, you go March 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. We're literally looking at 8 days into Ramadan. Okay? Magomed Ankaleav needs to be cutting calories and going ahead and starting to cut his weight down. That's fight week, guys. Man, that's what these guys do anyway. So they're actually only going to be into Ramadan for a few days. So MMA Joey was making it sound like people talk about this Dagestani privilege. Look at this. They're forcing this guy to compete during Ramadan, which is a religious holiday and a religious month for him. Bro, I mean, the UFC operates under the preset of if you have a regular job somewhere, if you work somewhere, you can't call your boss and say, well, during the month of March, I observe Ramadan, so I won't be able to be at work that month. I mean, you can tell them that, but your boss is probably going to look at you like, okay, well, just don't come back in April either. See ya. I'll get somebody else who doesn't have to celebrate Ramadan. Listen, this fight has been a long time coming. Ankaleav has been waiting for this. And like I said, this is at the very beginning of Ramadan. The fight happens 8 days in to Ramadan. Magomed Ankaleav probably walks around at anywhere between 230, 240, 245 pounds. Okay? So he's going to be needing to cut some meals during that time. So I guarantee you the way he and his team looked at it is like, I mean, it's Ramadan. That's all good. We need to, that's the beginning of fight week. Literally, literally, the day Ramadan starts for them is basically the beginning of that coming up fight week. They need to start cutting weight anyway. So I don't see the whole Ramadan aspect of it being a big deal. They're not going to be able to lean on that as some sort of reason as to why he's not going to be on his A game. Listen, Alex Pereira himself is going to have to start cutting meals, cutting calories by that point as well, so he can make the 205 limit. And he's not Muslim. He's not Muslim, nor does he celebrate Ramadan. Okay? So, not a big deal, MMA Joey. But listen, this is not pick on MMA Joey Day, but he shits on other fighters all the time. So, I'm going to shit on him. He also says, in fact, you know what? Let me not tell you. Let me let you hear what he says. So, listen right here.
I mean, this fight, in my opinion, is massive. I know, maybe it doesn't have that superstar that's going to draw in a million pay-per-view buys, but Pereira's star power is growing. It is significant at this point. I wouldn't say he's a massive draw, but he's a mid-tier draw for the UFC.
In case you missed it, he clearly says Alex Pereira is not a huge pay-per-view draw. He's okay, but he's not a huge pay-per-view draw. Bro, do you actually watch the sport? Like, he's one of the biggest right now. Like, sometimes I'm just like, what? sometimes I rewind it because I'm like, are you serious? I mean, listen, everybody can't get all of the facts right, but that's more like, uh, it's not only a fact, but that's one that you can just kind of, if you watch the sport at all, he's a huge draw right now. All right. So I looked it up. Yes, Alex Pereira is considered a big pay per view draw in the UFC. He's been called a superstar and one of the UFC's biggest draws among active fighters. Pereira is a two-division world champion in MMA and kickboxing. He's known for his fan-friendly style and devastating knockout power. He's considered one of the greatest combat athletes of all time. Dana White has called him a superstar who sells 4 times the amount of effing pay-per-views of Jake Paul. Daniel Cormier has said that Pereira and heavyweight champion John Jones are the only 2 UFC champions that can move the needle. So I trust what Daniel Cormier says and what Dana White says more than MMA Joey. So listen, I don't want to just pick his words and mince his words and stuff like that. It's just something he said. It's not a huge deal, but you're full of shit. He's absolutely a huge pay-per-view draw. Okay, one of the biggest that the UFC has right now. So listen, we're not here to talk about all of that. Let's talk about the fight, because not just that fight, but there is also a co-main event between Justin Gaethje and Dan Hooker. This is a banger of a fight. It blows my mind that these guys have been orbiting around each other in the same division for as long as they have, both of them being close to the top, and they've never crossed paths. It's crazy, just the way the stars have aligned, I guess. But it's about time these two faced one another. And you already know what you're getting with this fight. You're going to get a really, really fun, sweet kickboxing match. Both of these guys are known for their exciting styles. Neither one of these guys I don't see taking it to the ground. They're going to be in there to make the fans happy. And I anticipate being very happy watching that fight. I'm not going to break down that fight now because I will do a full breakdown of this whole card a little later on as we move in closer to the date of it. But I will talk a little bit about the Alex Pereira Magomed Ankaleav fight. Okay. MMA Joey, again, I'm not trying to suck off MMA Joey, but I do watch his channel. I like some of his takes. He bitches a little bit too much about fighters and stuff like that. And everybody can have an opinion, right? Opinions are like assholes. We all have one. MMA Joey is entitled to his too. But if you've never stepped into a cage with another man and fought until one of you either gets knocked out or loses or goes to a judge's scorecard and they tell you that you're the loser or the winner, then you can't really say a whole lot. There's certain aspects of MMA I just don't attack. I don't attack certain aspects about fighters and so forth and so on because I've never done it. I've sparred in my local kickboxing class a little bit. That's about it. And it definitely was not against top world class level competition. Okay, I can assure you. So, with that said, I always feel some sort of way about talking a lot of shit about some of these fighters. MMA Joey has already said that Ankaleav is winning this fight. He thinks that he's going to dethrone Alex Pereira. Not so fast. I don't necessarily think we can so easily and quickly say that. Okay. I actually thought that Yuri Prochazka was going to be able to beat Pereira by virtue of him having a really good grappling game. We saw what he did to Glover Teixeira. Yuri is a scrambler. I mean, he's known as being a striker, but he's actually a really, really efficient grappler as well. And he showed that against Glover Teixeira. I know Glover was 40 years old, but he was a champion at the time. And Glover is one of the highest level grapplers that the UFC had at that time. And Yuri was able to finish him on the mat. I thought for sure he was going to be able to do that with Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira has a left hook from hell, and he has a calf kick that is going to eat up the legs of Magomed Ankaleav. In his fight with Jan Blachowicz was really getting his legs eaten up bad to a point where we thought he may finish him that way. And turns out those two had a draw together. Very, very, very close contested fight. Some people thought that Jan won that. Jan thought that he won that. Either way, you let it go to the judges. If you don't put the guy away, you're always just kind of susceptible to whatever the judges decide, and if they're thinking about what they had for dinner this past Saturday night or some chick that they banged or whatever, they may not be paying attention to your fight, and sometimes it's not going to be what you anticipate them to say when those scorecards get read out. So, and again, MMA math doesn't work. We all know that, but when we start looking at these guys and comparing skill to skill, you have to look at former matchups, how each individual stacked up against their former matchups, and then you kind of have to compare and contrast. That coupled with what their previous experience is, what their martial arts training and experience is, that's how you come to the conclusion of, well, this is my prediction. This is who I think is going to win the fight. MMA math doesn't work, but you kind of have to use it in making a prediction, I guess is my point. So my argument here is going to be that the strength of schedule for Alex Pereira far exceeds the strength of schedule for Magomed Ankaleav. Okay, now I get Alex Pereira's last fight was against Khalil Roundtree. Khalil Roundtree's number 8. I get that, but Khalil Roundtree is a world-class kickboxer. Okay, Magomed Ankaleav, he's kind of considered both, but he is mainly a stand-up fighter. That's what he supposedly excels at, right? Khalil Roundtree excels as a stand-up fighter. You saw what happened to him. Now listen, Khalil Roundtree is a dog, and despite being completely outgunned by a better, bigger, taller fighter in that fight, and this guy went out on his shield if I've ever seen anyone do so. I had a ton of respect for Khalil Roundtree after that fight was over with. I was like, wow, number 8 guy against the champion. Obviously, Alex Pereira is the more skilled, technical fighter, and in addition to that, he's 3-4 inches taller. He's got a reach on him. I mean, Khalil Roundtree was swimming upstream that whole fight, and he still was able to last as long as he did and not get put out until way later on in the 4th round, right? So I respected him for that. But then you look before that, Yuri Prochazka, one of the best in the division, former champion. Before that, Jamal Hill, one of the best in the division, former champion. Before that, Yuri Prochazka again, one of the best in the division, former champion. Look at before that, Jan Blachowicz, one of the best in the division. Maybe not anymore, but he used to be at this time when Alex Pereira fought him, former champion, right? Look before that, Israel Adesanya, former champion. Before that, Adesanya again, former champion. Before that, Sean Strickland, who has now been a champion and is a former champion. Pereira's last 8 fights have been against people who either current or former champions or someone who eventually would win the championship in Sean Strickland, right? Let's look over here at Magomed Ankaleav. Alexander Rakic. Good win, but it was a decision. He went to a decision with him. You look at it before that. Johnny Walker. He won by 2nd round TKO. Who hasn't beat Johnny Walker? I'm telling you, if Herb Dean were to cough on Johnny Walker, he literally just... Johnny Walker is the most glass-jawed light heavyweight that I've ever seen in my life. Now, his last couple of fights, he's looked a little bit better, I think more so it's just been that he hasn't gotten hit just right. But he's one of those guys that when he gets touched on that sweet spot, his sweet spots are very sensitive. If he gets hit in a certain place, he just completely out and he can't recover. Some guys are just that way. Johnny Walker is that way. So credit to Ankaleav, he beat him, but then again, Johnny Walker, very easily finished, in my opinion. Before that, had the fight with Johnny Walker, kneed Walker when he was downed, I believe it was, and there was some sort of language barrier, miscommunication there. They asked Johnny Walker where he was. He's like, I'm in the desert. They're like, oh, we don't know where he is, even though he was actually in the desert because he was in Las Vegas or wherever it was. Anyway, in an ill-advised move, the refs stopped the fight and they couldn't continue. Okay. Before that, Jan Blachowicz, split decision draw. Okay, so he didn't even beat Jan Blachowicz. Barely got by him. And then before that, Anthony Smith, who's never been champion. Before that, Thiago Santos, who, this is 2022. Thiago Santos was dangerous back in 2016-17, way past his prime, in my opinion. He hasn't been top of the food chain since he went against John Jones back in the day. Before that, Ozdemir. Before that, Krylov. Listen, these are good wins. I'm not talking shit. I mean, I would get smacked up by every one of these guys. The competition level of Alex Pereira is on a completely different playing field than Magomed Ankaleav. Alex Pereira has fought pretty much nothing but champions. His last 8 fights have been against somebody who was either formerly a champion, currently a champion, and he took their belt, or would become a champion, right? And then if you look at Magomed Ankaleav, he's fought one fighter that was formerly a champion in his last 8 fights, right? So, we're talking strength of schedule here. And I know MMA math doesn't work, but it freaking matters. I'm sorry. It freaking matters. So let's talk about the fight itself. You know what they say, waiting makes the appetite grow stronger. I think that's what we're seeing here. Because these two have been kept apart, and for so long, the UFC has kept these two apart, and because we've had to wait for so long to see this fight, I think people are mistakenly just assuming that this is the guy to beat Alex Pereira. I don't think it is. He's looked like a world beater up against these guys that aren't a dominant champion, and I think he's going to get up there against Alex Pereira, and I think he's going to realize that there are levels to this thing, and you make one mistake, and it could be that quick that you make that mistake against someone like Alex Pereira. It's lights out. You're done, bro. You're done. MMA Joey is blowing up Ankaleav's grappling and this and that and the third. Well, let's talk about how Ankaleav lost and got submitted by Paul Craig. If he's such a dominant grappler, why did he get submitted by Paul Craig? His only loss was being submitted by Paul Craig. And don't get me wrong, Paul Craig's a great jiu-jitsu artist, this and that and the third, but if his grappling, as a Dagestani, if he was, if his Dagestani grappling was on the level of like Islam and Habib and all these guys that are known for being these amazing sambo guys and grappling guys and submission guys and this and that and the third, there's no way in hell he would have lost to Paul Craig. No way, bro. No way. I don't think his grappling is as good as people think his grappling is. I'm just going to be completely honest. And on the feet, fair enough. He looks good. He looks good enough to beat Ion Cutelaba. He's good enough to beat, Nikita Krylov. He's good enough to get over unanimous decision on Ozdemir. Thiago Santos, Anthony Smith. He's good enough for that, but none of those aforementioned fighters are anywhere close to the striking level of Alex Pereira. And I don't think Magomed Ankaleav's grappling is good enough to stifle and to keep Alex Pereira down. I think Alex Pereira keeps the belt, and I think that just continues to propel him to a higher level of superstardom than he already is. MMA Joey. Alex Pereira's not a huge draw, bro. What sport are you watching, bro? Anyway, I will come back and do like a full, main card breakdown a little bit later on this once we get closer to it. But I just kind of wanted to put this out there. The fight is actually been booked. I think a lot of people were afraid that wasn't going to happen because of Ramadan and this, that, and the third. And listen, trust me, the whole Ramadan thing, that is not going to adversely affect Magomed Ankaleav. I don't think at all. Because again, it's only 8 days in to Ramadan, and he's going to be needing to cut weight and start bringing that weight down probably 2 weeks or more before the fight. Before the fight ever gets there, these guys usually go ahead and start edging down their weight a little bit so that once they get closer and once they get to fight week and then close to fight day, they're in an arm's length from already being at the 205 weight limit, right? So, if it's going to be feasible for these guys that are walking around at 230, 240 pounds to get down to 205, they're not going to wait until even 8 days before the fight to start edging down that weight. They're already going to start cutting calories. They're trying to flush out their system, getting good runs in, hitting that cardio a little heavier so they can start to sweat out some of those calories and some of that fat and some of the weight, and to sweat out some of that water weight that they're holding on to. So I don't see the whole Ramadan thing being an issue at all. Listen, if it was going to be an issue, and I think if they were trying to give Ankaleav a date of like March 15th or March 22nd or something like that, he may have protested a little more. But I think the UFC worked this out with Ankaleav, only being 8 days into Ramadan. He's right on par, man. He needs to be cutting that weight anyway. Again, MMA Joey, bro, everybody doesn't have to eat 8 meals a day like you do. It's perfectly normal for people not to eat 8 meals a day. I know that's shocking. But anyway. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel if you would. Like it, share it, all of the above, and I will see you on the next one.